On today's episode, I brought on an SEO expert to talk about Google's algorithm and how it really boils down to math. And understanding what Google's looking for helps you to optimize key pages on your website for search. He also talks about how to conduct competitive analysis in a way that helps you move up in search rankings and know where you should try for better rankings and where you should maybe focus efforts in different areas of your site. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, TREW Marketing. TREW is a full service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Kyle Ruth, and he has many titles. Let me run through them here. He's the co-founder of PageOptimizer Pro. He's the lead SEO at the High Voltage SEO Agency, and he's the co-founder of Internet Marketing Gold. Ooh, that's a lot of hats. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You bet. So with all these different things that you're doing, tell me just what is a day in the life of Kyle Ruth?
Well, a big part of my day is spent on the software. I spent a lot of time on that, making sure that the algorithm is working like it should be working, and that we're getting features out. A lot of my day is spent actually preparing for podcasts like this, and that's kind of what a lot of Internet Marketing Gold does for me. I have courses there, and we test Google's algorithm, and so there's a lot of speaking and stuff like that, and so there's a lot of prep time. And then I get in on the strategy sessions for the agency. I don't really talk with clients anymore, but I do see kind of the higher level things of what's going on, and kind of help the team implement or set the strategy that then goes and gets implemented.
Got it. But in everything that you do, obviously the common thread is SEO. And I noticed to the extent that when I looked you up on LinkedIn, you had something really interesting on your personalized LinkedIn address, like the URL. You have SEO at the end of that. So did I just pick up on an SEO hack, Kyle?
Yeah, I think the team is in charge of my LinkedIn. So, but I think that was done to game the LinkedIn algorithm because it's a pretty simple algorithm. So I'm sure that's exactly why we did that.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be observant of SEO hacks, as you often encourage marketers to do, and I'm sure that will be a key theme of today's interview. But before we jump into that topic, I have to ask. So again, I'm like stalking your LinkedIn here, and I see that, this guy earned a law degree and now he's an SEO expert. So there's got to be an interesting story behind that.
Yeah, so I was an attorney. I am an attorney, but I was a trial attorney. I was in court every day, and I did criminal defense and divorce, custody, and support. And after 4 years, I burnt out and decided I would rather chew on shards of broken glass than do one more divorce. And so I did what most people do, and I moved to South Korea. And
we're all doing that. It's a craze.
Right. It's an A to B to C really kind of process when you go from that to then SEO. But I decided to take 1 year off and just not worry about it and find the easiest job I could. And that was teaching English. And that 1 year sabbatical turned into 5. And then while I was there, I started a business. And in starting that business, I had to build a very complex website, and I built a team. And so I had to go through a lot of devs. We built the team. And then I realized, you know what, I could probably general contract websites, and why not? So that's what I started doing. I brought my brother into business. He does web design and development. And then I got the bright idea. I was like, you know what? We've got all these Indian freelancers. Let's go to India and open up a company there. And that's what we did. And we rented this unit. It was on the first floor was the business, and on the second floor were apartments. I was not Indian at the time. My brother was there, and we were told you're going to get a shakedown from the police. And sure enough, there's a knock on the door. My brother answers it. It's the police. And they say, we need to see your business papers. He shows the papers. They're like, these are the wrong papers. And he's like, okay, kind of how much do you want? And they put handcuffs on him and threw him in jail. And he's
Wow.
now talking to the chief of police, and the chief of police is like, these could be the right papers. I don't know. But you have two choices. You can leave town tomorrow, or you can sit in jail and wait for the magistrate to come. And my brother was like, well, when does the magistrate come? And the chief of police was like, I don't know. So my brother goes, I'll leave town tomorrow. So he runs back to the office. Our employees have scattered because obviously they don't want to be involved in this. He grabs what he can. We get him out of India. And we're hemorrhaging clients because we have these clients and we have no employees. So my brother goes, I can take these 4 clients and service them. And I don't code. And so we had just taken on these SEO contracts. That was another bright idea that I had, where we could, we're building these websites for these people. We could charge, I don't know, like $100 a month, and the people that we had hired to do the SEO are obviously gone. And I had invested about $30,000 into this. And this was a time in my life when I had about $31,000 to my name.
Right.
And in order for me to pay the rent next month, I had to learn SEO that day to keep those clients. And that's what I did. I was like, we got to sort this right now. And so that's what I went out and did. And it turns out I was pretty good at it. And in fact, quite good at it. And then I was able to kind of hang my shingle out to get other SEO clients and was able to get them. And then something that was frustrating me early on was, is this a ranking factor or should I be doing this? And you kind of search in Google, is this a ranking factor? And you get 3 yeses, 3 maybes, and 3 nos. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And then I realized like, oh, you know what? People aren't putting this answer out. What they're doing is they're testing. They're running their own sites and then figuring it out. So then I was like, well, how do you do that? And then I kind of figured out a way to figure out how to test Google's algorithm if something is or is not a ranking factor. And then I went to a conference. I spoke at my first conference in 2015, and I was speaking on how to test and the method that I developed. And this was a super high level conference. And I thought this would be more of a conversation, like, this is how I'm testing. How are you guys testing? And it turns out no one was testing. And that was very apparent about 3 minutes into the conversation or into my preso, and like, people are like, well, what do you do about this? Or what do you do about that? I was like, oh, nobody's doing this. Wow. And that's when I realized I was onto something. And so from there, then I started publishing my tests, and people can see them. And I've created this testing group. I also now have a US patent on how to determine if something is or is not a ranking factor within Google's algorithm. And I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only people to have that type of a patent. And then, as you know, I also did the stunt where I ranked a page in Lorem Ipsum, and this is all using the whole thing and it's all kind of based on the same premise, the things I learned from the testing. And the biggest thing is that Google can't read. Google is not human. Google is amazing and powerful, but Google is not human and is not reading. And it's math, because Google is an algorithm. And if you give the algorithm the math that it wants, you can do very, very well. Obviously, you need to write good content to satisfy the user, that you want somebody to do what you want them to do something when you come to their pages. But when it comes to ranking, that's a whole other thing. And that's a very math-based thing. And that's then kind of what I've taken in and gone into like my on-page tool, the agency, and then also the testing group.
You're kind of talking the love language of engineering companies here. You're talking about testing and math and analytics. So even if there are marketers listening, all of us are working in these highly technical companies that value data. So your approach and your methodology to utilizing tests, utilizing lots of data, it falls right in line with how these companies just work. And so I think it's an easier conversation to have with executives.
Well, people here just write good content, right? That's all you got to do. And that's not anywhere near the truth, and everybody's had that experience where you've written a piece of content that is better, especially within the technical space. When you're writing about like technical aspect, this is better than what's on page 1, and you're not on page 1. You realize instantly that it's not about writing good content. It must be something else. And that other thing, it is math. It is a very math-based concept.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, I would never tell someone it's just as simple as good content. To me, that's the same as, but our product is better. Why are people buying it? The specs are better.
Exactly.
Well, there might be some other factors involved here.
Exactly right.
So do you find that the typical marketer out there has some outdated or incorrect assumptions of how Google works?
Most of them think that Google makes value judgments. What is on page 1? Google has made the assessment like this is better. I see. That it's a value judgment. It's that Google has made this assessment based on this must be the thing that is best, or this piece of content is the best. And that's the biggest thing you have to overcome with other marketers or with clients. That they get hurt. When their page is not on page 1 because like Google has judged me poorly, and it's not that they think Google thinks that the product is or the service is not where it's at. It's what's on the page is the issue.
Okay. Well, I know everybody's on their edge of the seat, as am I, to hear what are some of the first steps marketers should take when looking to improve their Google rank? I mean, we're all trying to do it, right? I want to improve. I want to get up higher in the rankings. Where should I start?
Well, one thing that's important to understand is that there are places on a page that Google looks for certain terms. There are 3 types of terms that Google is looking for. Your exact keyword, the thing that people are typing in to Google, variations of that keyword or phrase match, very close synonyms of that phrase or that particular keyword, and then contextual terms. In the industry, they're called LSI, and old school SEOs really hate that term, and they're right. It is a very lazy term, but it is what people use. So I think they kind of need to get over themselves on that. But we're talking about things that give context and meaning. So those are the 3 things that Google's looking for, and Google's looking for them in very specific places on the page. Not all those places are equal. Some carry more weight than others. And one of the biggest things, if you're coming right out of the gate, what should I do? There are 4 places that carry the most weight on a web page, and that is your title tag. That's the title that search engines see. It's often called the meta title. Your H1, that is the title that humans see, and that's at the top of your page. You should only have one of those. Within paragraph text or lists or tables. So that's the content that is on your page. And the last thing is within your URL. So whatever you have past the .com. Those are the 4 top places. And so if you're building a page from scratch, here's the dirty secret of SEO. If you put your target keyword in those 4 places, you've probably done 60% of SEO right then and there. Don't overthink it. Just put it in those places. Now, it gets a lot more mathy after that. But to be honest with you, that's when you're getting to more competitive terms, higher competition, where you really need to get into some of the nitty gritty. But people really want to overthink SEO, but do not. Put your keyword in those 4 places. And I give one caveat. If you have a page that's ranking pretty well or a page that has some age, don't change your URL. If you realize like, oh, we don't have our keyword in the URL, don't change that, because when you
Leave
change
it
your
alone,
URL,
it's working. Yeah.
right? Yeah, when you change the URL, you're giving Google a brand new page. So you don't want to do that. But if you're building a page that's brand new and it's not ranking very well, or a page that hasn't been built yet, make sure you've got it in there, but leave established pages as is, and then look at like your title tag, your H1 in the paragraph text.
Yeah. So you mentioned context. And so I obviously the trend today used to be, we have these short pages that lead to other pages. Now we've moved to these long scrolling pages that try to be more comprehensive on a subject. Is that a good example of providing context and phrasing around keywords?
It's not like an either or. Where you need to write a shorter page or you need to write a longer page. The best approach is to look at what Google is rewarding. Look at the pages that Google currently likes. And so you do the search, look at your competitors, and you'll see maybe sometimes those are shorter or even like product type pages. Sometimes you'll see their product category pages. Sometimes you'll see their longer form articles. You want to give Google the page that it's expecting. And that's the best approach in that. So I wouldn't do it as an either or, shorter than longer. I would do it as what is Google expecting for this particular keyword? And then I would give Google the page that it wants.
Interesting. Okay. When you're updating your site and you're trying to optimize and give Google what it wants, you also want to obviously make sure you're giving the humans looking at your page a good usability experience. And we all remember, gosh, the keyword stuffing and how awful that was. So how do you recommend marketers balance those 2 goals?
Well, the keyword stuffing, as I mentioned, those top 4 places, that's only putting your keyword in 4 places. And by and large, that's probably all you need for most keywords, depending on what you're talking about. But a lot of them, that's about it, maybe a couple more times. The variations, so very close synonyms, a lawyer for attorney, or phrase match, best purple frisbee, and then you've got purple frisbee or purple and frisbee and best, and those kind of words on their own are top. Those do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and they keep you from doing keyword stuffing, and they end up helping you write better content because you're not saying best purple frisbee over and over and over and over again. You're doing the phrase match of it, and that's a much better approach. And Google likes it, and humans like it as well. The one thing that I would add to that, though, I think to what you were talking about with the longer form content, creating pages that support your target page are critical. One of the big concepts right now is topical authority or topical coverage, and you don't necessarily need to get that all on one page. Usually a very good approach is to take what would be a section on a page, and that becomes a supporting piece of content, and you link up to your target page. And then within a cluster that's quite related, you link all those to each other, and you link them all back up to your target page. what ends up happening is those things, they can rank on their own and get the right type of traffic. And usually they can rank with no SEO, just with that phrase or that term or maybe a question within the title tag and within the H1. And then all of a sudden your authority starts to raise within Google because Google's now ranking you for so many more keywords. I think that's a better approach than thinking about, like, we need to write an article that's this long.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing a long form article, I would do it a certain length. And then after that, I'd take portions of it and I'd create supporting articles out of that.
Absolutely. I agree. We're calling those pillar pages, but same thing. It's kind of like, here's your top level page on a subject or a theme. And then here's all these supporting pages that you can go to learn more. We're also finding that having an FAQ section where you're trying to go for that phrase match and linking to blog articles is performing very well. So,
love it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're in line there. How long does it take for an optimized page to move up in the rankings? So say I've created this, done my research, done this perfect page. Is it like next day? I assume not.
Well, one of the factors that depends on is how much authority your site has. And how difficult that particular term is. One thing that I've really gotten into is determining what your natural tier is. This is something where Google, if you launch a page, Google will put you on page 1, page 2 without any effort because you launch a piece of content that is within your natural tier. You've seen this before. Everyone's done this. You launch a page and you hit page 2 with no work and you think you're just an SEO god. And then you do it for something that's very similar. And you're like, oh man, this should be, and you can't crack the top 100. And the difference between those two is that one was in your natural tier and one wasn't. And the idea is that you can still win with that other one, but it requires boosts to take you out of your natural tier and move you up. And those boosts are often backlinks or other types of signals that are outside of your page or more intense on page, for example. The problem with boosts is that when Google changes things, what happens is Google doesn't penalize you when an update happens. Google just removes the boost, and then you just move back down to where you belong.
Oh, wow.
So a key point is to identify where your tier is and then post content within that tier so that you naturally move up by gaining traffic from Google with relatively no SEO. So that when updates happen, when changes happen, when somebody was giving you a backlink and that page just goes away, link rot is what it's called, not through no fault of your own. But the idea is that then you don't take the hit. The idea is that you have a little blip, but because most of your traffic or a good chunk of your traffic was based off of basically no SEO, just posting content within your natural tier. And then as you move up tiers, you can post content that is more competitive, that could get more traffic, and you can kind of gradually move up those tiers. And then you really don't have to worry about any Google updates or any changes in Google or anything like that. And your site will really start rocking.
So how do you determine what your natural tier is? Is that stack ranking, what's doing well, what's performing well, and what are the commonalities of those pages?
That's a great way to do it. Another way to do it, and this comes from a guy named Chris Carter, and you can search Builder Society, SEO with no resources. He has a great article on this, and I think that's a good starting point. But the idea is that it's based on how much traffic Google is giving you now. So if Google is, say, giving you between 50 and 100 clicks a day, you can go after keywords with low competition that are 50 to 100 for a month. And the idea is that you can write a piece of content and post it, and you should rank, page 1, 2, 3 quite quickly. And then you're posting in the correct tier. If you are posting those types of keywords and you're not in page 1, 2, 3 quite quickly, and by quickly I mean a month or two. And if that doesn't happen, then you need to come down a notch in terms of the volume, the monthly volume for those particular keywords, and you can find your tier, and then you'll see it start to click. Where you're probably hitting about
more competitive, less competitive.
Right.
And I think that's very relevant in this industry because people can optimize that long tail, the long tail keywords is still very much alive when it comes to these engineers, Googling very specific issues or technical challenges, whatever it is. So,
well, we see that all the time because when you think about spec pages that have the product, the SKU or the product identifier, that's just like all kinds of digits. Those are easy to win. Those have very low competition. You do a whole bunch of those though, and your site performs very well because you could put that into some sort of tool and it'll tell you it has zero search volume. And you're like, is that a waste of time? They're not. Definitely do them, even though there's zero search type terms. within your technical thing, purview. But it also shows that you have topical coverage for what you're talking. All the products are related to each other. So when somebody's searching for that particular thing, Google knows, oh, there's a chance somebody can find it here.
So the aggregate will do well, and then you'll get into your higher volume searches.
Exactly right.
Okay, interesting. So when you're doing this research, you mentioned looking at competitors. Are there some particular things to pay attention to?
Perhaps one of the biggest things to pay attention to is how your competitors are phrasing the target term. So some people are like, should I use this? Should I use it this way, or should I use it that way? And the idea is that you can see what Google likes. Again, don't overthink it. Don't overthink Google, or don't try to like amuse Google. Like Google wants something like, see what Google actually likes. So do the search the certain way, and then see if you can see that within the title tags. What is displayed in the SERPs. And you might not know this, but about 3 weeks ago, Google announced that they're changing titles. They're changing it to what they think is most relevant. Well, that's beautiful, because then if Google changes a title, because you can see what somebody wrote as their title, and you can see what Google changed it to, that is a massive insight into what Google actually likes. And so for your particular target term, I would go with the one that Google changed it to. Google seems to prefer it this way.
Right.
Perhaps we should do it that way,
As long as it's not, it still makes technical sense and all of that. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. You also mentioned site authority, page authority, and of course, back in the day, this had a lot to do with external sites linking to you, how many pages you have on your site. What are some other ways site authority has evolved over the years?
What I'm seeing more now is, and this has actually been a truism for a while, but I think there was a trend for a minute to prune your site. But what I'm seeing now is larger sites perform better, almost across the board. The bigger the site, the better it seems to do. I wouldn't necessarily game it where I'll just spin 5,000 pages up with garbage on them and put them in. That's probably not the right approach. But a strategy where you are continuing to post content at a very regular clip so that you are growing out your site. And that gives you more. What I'm finding is sites that are ranking for more keywords do better than sites that they're ranking for fewer, for those target terms, for those main money terms. So a site that's ranking for 20,000 keywords going after 4 terms is going to do better than a site that's ranking for 2,000 keywords going for the same 4 terms. And really the easiest way to do that, the safest way to do that, the way that is white hat, so you don't really have to worry about backlinks, is posting relevant content at a very steady clip. So I would make
that shows your site's fresh as well, right? Having that steady cadence. Okay.
When Google's coming to crawl your site, it's seeing new things all the time. And then it's crawling through the interlinking that you have, that you've set up a nice little silo or virtual silo, and it can see that relationship between all those pages. It can see the relationship to a target page. That's the right approach for sure.
Yeah. So companies will come to us on occasion and say, well, we have these 2 business units and they're completely different personas. One's not going to be a reference to the other. So we want to have 2 websites for them. What would be your advice, Kyle?
Well, I mean, if like the technical person is searching one way and then the layman is searching another way, I could see doing that. But again, I would see if Google sees it that way, where, if somebody does the technical search and somebody does the layman search, is the same page showing up? And if it is, then you might want that all in one site. I would say it often comes down to how much budget and resources you have, because maintaining 2 sites is twice the budget and twice the resources. So if you have a $2,000 budget, I would spend $2,000 on one site rather than $1,000 on 2 sites, to be perfectly honest, unless they were like super easy terms on their own. So,
and making this site, like you said, the more content, the more fresh it is, the bigger site, it does better. Yeah. So I think that part, it's very difficult to do, cutting your effort in half, cutting your size in half.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I feel like it would have to be so different, like just so absolutely different. And I that's rare. That's super. I would imagine the person in that dilemma is not the one that actually has it's so rare, Yeah. I would probably put it all on one site.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about PageOptimizer Pro. So you started your own software to help aid marketers with SEO. Why did you do that? What was the catalyst?
We were using another tool for our on page and they kept changing it. And I hated that. I was like, you know what? I'll just build my own, God damn it. And that's what we did. That's kind of what it came down to. And so internally, just for the agency, we wrote an algorithm and we were using Google Sheets, first Excel into Google Sheets. And showed some friends of mine, some SEO friends. I was like, "Do you like this? Does this look good?" And they're like, "Yeah, we'd pay you money for that." And Google Sheets only goes so far. And then our CTO, she was like, "You know what? I think I can learn Python." And I was like, "Of course you can. Who can't?" And so she goes out, and it takes her about 3 weeks. She learns Python, and then she writes the original script for it.
Gosh.
And then we built a small little thing we threw on the back end of our agency site and just gave away for free, where somebody put in like their email address and a little bit of information. We emailed them a sheet, and that took off. And so then we paid a developer to take our little script, our Python script, and develop it out and turn it into a SaaS tool. And then that was in 2017 is when we were getting it for free. 2018 is when we started charging, and now we're 3 years into that, and it's been a lot of fun. It's going really well.
Good. And what does it do? What does it help marketers do?
So it's just an on-page tool, and it's only focused on on-page elements. And the idea is that we do edge analysis. We have our own proprietary algorithm. We aren't using APIs, so we're not giving like averages or something like that. What we're doing is we're looking at the landscape and saying, okay, here's where you could get an edge. Because there are times when you might want to do the same as your competitors. There are times when you might want to do a little bit less. There are times you might want to do a little bit more in terms of your term usage. So that exact keyword, its variations, the contextual terms, we have all those within there, and then the places where you should put them approximately how many times. And that's what the tool does. So it evaluates your page and says, okay, increase here, 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 and here in these places. And that gives your page the best opportunity to rank well. Because really, SEO is a game of probability. You know, you need to put yourself in the best chance for success. And the idea of the tool is that it does that. It puts your page in the best chance for success.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I'm listening to you. It struck me that the types of marketers that are focused on creating the best content and working on strategy and maybe the creative and lead gen aren't necessarily the best people in your company to do this analysis and really be very analytical about it. It's almost like a different personality, if you will, different skill set.
Some people look at the tool and hate it. They find it very constricting, but other people see it and they see it freeing, like, oh, this is all I have to do,
Yeah.
There are certain people that the mindset will not work for this at all.
Right. Oh, but that's fair. We're all created different. I mean, math, I run away when I hear that word. So, I'm not good at school math at all, but, statistics and probability, that's where I kind of excel. And that's all that we're doing. But I agree with you. Like when I hear like math, I think like trigonometry or calculus, and I'm just like, nah. Yeah. But I do math every day, turns out. Well, I can gig out on some statistics too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that, a lot of SEOs, I think, like stats, right? We all like stats and probability. I think that's where we live. And that's what POP is. The math there is that kind of math. So I think if you like stats and probability, you'll probably like this kind of math.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go check it out. So are there other research tools that you find are important for the marketer when they're doing SEO research or trying to optimize their site?
Sure. I mean, you need something to do kind of the overarching analysis. Like, as I said, POP is just queued on one thing, and we're priced at a point where you don't have to make a decision between two tools. It's a companion tool, because when let's say you use Moz or Ahrefs or SEMrush or whoever you like, and they've got maybe some sort of on-page type deal, they're just giving you averages. They're just giving you general best practices, or you like Yoast or something like that. That's not really an on-page tool, because it just gives you a green dot and it's a general best practice. So you should have some of those tools where you are doing kind of comprehensive competitive analysis. You're doing link analysis and you're doing those sorts of things. You're doing a tool for site crawls, whether that's one of the big ones, they're using something like Sitebulb or something like that, or Screaming Frog for audits. So those tools are something you need. And then the idea is that POP comes in as a companion tool that's helping you with your on page for those target pages, for those ones that you're really spending a lot of time doing the research on and writing and optimizing and doing all that. That's what POP is for those particular pages.
Cool. I appreciate the clarification. That makes a lot of sense. Well, we're almost out of time here, but I want to make sure that our listeners and viewers know about the rhinoplasty story. So if you could just give a teaser for that, and then in the show notes, I'll put a link to your presentation of it.
Sure. So it was a public competition done in a Facebook group called SEO Signals Lab, and it was to rank for the term rhinoplasty Plano. Rhinoplasty is a nose job, and Plano is right outside Dallas. And it was a sprint. You had 30 days. You had to have a fresh domain, so you couldn't have done anything to it. And then after that, you could do whatever you want. And the team with the best ranking site wins. I felt I had a pretty strong team behind me at high voltage, and I was like, let's throw our hat in the ring. So myself and 27 other professionals entered. With the sprint, we ended up taking 5th, which wasn't bad. We were on page 9, though. I think the winner was on page 8. But about 2 weeks later, we hit page 1 without doing any other work to it. And then about 2 weeks after that, we went to number 1 organic and number 1 in the maps. And people really lost their minds. And the reason they lost their minds is because we did the site entirely in lorem ipsum. And then we did the math that you need for rhinoplasty plano, for the exact keyword, for its variations, for its contextual terms. And then we crassly copied and pasted those terms into the lorem ipsum in very specific places. And showing that it is math-based. Google can't read. Google isn't reading the lorem ipsum and getting a lot of value out of that. Google is looking for specific terms in specific places a certain amount of time. And that's what we're able to demonstrate.
So it was a bit of a stake through the heart as a content marketer when I heard this story. But then the more I dug in and heard your methodology and specifically the type of business, it made sense, and a very powerful example of, the power of this algorithm. So I encourage everybody to go take a look at that talk that you gave on.
And it still works. It still works.
Wow. Good. Well, Kyle, where can people connect with you and your agency and product and learn more?
Sure. If they go to kyleroof.com, my agency's on there, my tool is on there, and the community where I do my tests, my courses are all in there as well. So that's probably the easiest place to go. They can also, of course, go to PageOptimizer Pro, hang out there, internetmarketing.gold, but kyleroof.com is pretty easy, and all my stuff is there.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Kyle.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.